Let's look at the day's business news. Brian Quinn is here. He's starting with the latest in Donald Trump's trade war. This time, high-tech semiconductors are in the firing line, aren't they, Brian?
Indeed, Stuart. Tech firms around the world breathed a sigh of relief on Friday as the Trump administration listed a number of exemptions from his massive import levies on Chinese goods. Laptops, smartphones, semiconductors, and other consumer electronics for which China is a major supplier were apparently spared those 145% tariffs. On Sunday, though, Trump warned that no country will be off the hook for tariffs and that the exemptions for tech products will be short-lived. The pause on tech tariffs was a major, if brief, victory for U.S. firms like Apple, who rely on Chinese suppliers for their top products like the iPhone. Apple has lost more than $770 billion in market value since the start of Trump's latest trade war. The president and his advisors now signaling that Chinese tech exports will still be targeted with hefty tariffs, but under the national security framework that underpins U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum. Here's Trump.
The tariffs will be in place in the not distant future because, as you know, like we did with steel, like we did with automobiles, like we did with aluminum, which are now fully on, we'll be doing that with semiconductors, with chips, and numerous other things. And that'll take place in the very near future.
Well, meanwhile, China retaliating not just with tariffs of its own, but also by cutting off a supply of critical minerals.
Well, Beijing has begun restricting the export of a number of what are these so-called rare earth minerals. Since early April, 6 heavy rare earth metals have been able to be shipped out of Chinese ports only with a special export license. The New York Times reporting that the government has only just begun setting up a system to issue such licenses. Also restricted from export are special magnets made from those metals, 90% of which are produced in China. Such metals and magnets are ubiquitous in many kinds of electric motors. They're used in cars, drones, missiles, and microchips themselves. Shortages of them could halt production at U.S. automotive factories rather quickly. Rare earth minerals are a sort of ace up China's sleeve in the escalating trade battle. They represent a relatively small proportion of the country's exports, but they are crucial for the supply chains of other nations. Here's China's foreign ministry.
Our
countermeasures against the U.S. bullying are not only to protect our legitimate rights and interests, but also to uphold international rules and order, safeguard the common interests of all countries, and maintain international fairness and justice. In the face of U.S. bullying and hegemony, compromise and concessions are not a way out.
Let's check in then on the day's trading action. Markets reaction.
Asian indexes mostly gained ground in Monday trade as investors cheered that pause on tech tariffs. Those gains are likely to be short-lived, though, as we heard Trump saying the tariffs will be back. Chinese markets also getting a boost from skyrocketing export figures as trading partners ordered extra shipments in anticipation of incoming tariffs. Overall exports were up 12% in March. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong up more than 2%. Japan's top trade official is set to head to Washington this week to meet with his U.S. counterparts to try and negotiate a resolution to U.S. tariffs. The Nikkei in Tokyo closing up over 1%. It is a similar picture here in Europe at the open, with the tech sector outperforming on the heels of that tariff pause. The CAC 40 here in Paris, as well as the DAX in Frankfurt, are each up more than 2% at the open.
Finally for business, Meta will be fighting to keep its social media empire intact as a major trial kicks off in the US.
The U.S. Federal Trade Commission's antitrust case against Meta is set to get underway on Monday. The future of WhatsApp and Instagram hang in the balance as regulators claim that Meta acquired them illegally to suppress competition. Meta's lawyers argue that it does face competition, and the FTC has no way of proving that consumers have been worse off because of the company's ownership of those subsidiary networks. Camille Knight has the details.
It's a trial that could break up Mark Zuckerberg's social media empire. Over the next few weeks, federal regulators will attempt to prove Meta broke competition laws in acquiring Instagram and WhatsApp. The landmark trial could force Zuckerberg to sell both platforms and threatens the future of Meta's $1.4 trillion advertising business, 50% or more of which comes from Instagram in the US. Federal and state regulators have been investigating the company for nearly 6 years and argue that Meta's monopolistic practices have also degraded the quality of its services.
By using its vast troves of data and money, Facebook has squashed or hindered what the company perceived as potential threats. They've reduced choices for consumers. They stifled innovation, and they degraded privacy protections for millions of Americans.
Meta's lawyers say the company has always competed fairly and that the acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp were approved by regulators over a decade ago. Meta also says it does face competition from other platforms like X, TikTok, Snapchat and YouTube. The case was filed during President Donald Trump's first term. At the time, relations between Zuckerberg and Trump were frosty. But the billionaire has since courted favour with the administration and has made repeated visits to the White House and Mar-a-Lago since January. The Wall Street Journal says Zuckerberg has been lobbying the president in person to have the FTC drop the case.
High-profile trial there, Stuart. We'll see if Trump steps in. Unclear at this point, but it will be going on for the next week or so. We'll be keeping a close eye on it, of course.
Of course. Brian, thank you very much. Brian Quinn with the Business News.